Don't know about you, but I am a massive fan of willow trees. They're exceptionally good at regenerating from lost limbs. This is something that's co-evolved because of, well, browsing pressure from things like elephants and beavers over millions of years. But now we're going to use that genetic trick for free trees. Simple trick really. All you need to do is find yourself a willow. Almost any species will do, as long as it's native to the country you want to plant it in. You get a pair of secateurs, find a good angle, and simple as that. That's how you get your cutting. Now we have our pile of willow clippings. We just need some wetland. Cool. Now I selected this area because it is a natural floodplain, which is finally being allowed to realize at least some ecological potential. But unfortunately they are still cutting in certain areas. You can see over there that most of the space has been, well, cut. Whereas here, in this smidge, it's been allowed to naturally regenerate, which is fantastic. If I had it my way, we'd just leave it, let nature do its thing. But we have to plant these to help spread the wet woodland that would naturally occur here. You can see where the tire tracks have come through for the big mowers, and that most of it is indeed trimmed. And there's really no ecological or environmental reason for this, because the more vegetation you have on a floodplain, the more water it sequesters. The less you have, if you just have it like this, the more water runs off, the more water builds up. Unfortunately for this little guy, he's a bit of a test to see if they will just brazenly bulldoze through it or let it grow. The rest I've started planting in there, which goes against my better judgment. If it were up to me, I would let the reeds and whatever plants grow there just grow naturally. And then I'd plant here, solely here on this basically wasted land. That way you maximize your input on the land and the efficacy of spreading the wet woodland. Wet woodland is absolutely fantastic. Like all wetland plants, they help soak up toxins from the water. And if you live in the UK, you will know that our rivers and streams aren't in the best conditions, especially here in the countryside where agricultural runoff does a lot of damage to the environment. Another great thing willows can do that very few other plants can do is by the water's edge, they can actually compete with an invasive plant called Himalayan balsam. Here we can see its remains that absolutely devastated this stretch of stream? Yeah, stream. Here's a better look. The reason Himalayan balsam is so bad is that it grows rapidly, spreads rapidly, and outcompetes most other plants by shading them out. And during the colder months of the year, the plant dies, its roots along with it, causing the sides of the banks of rivers and streams to erode because there's no roots to hold them in place, unless we plant these guys. Here's a great example of the life that willows support. Black aphids. Now, if you're a gardener, you might not like aphids, but they do prove to be very vital to the rest of the ecosystem, especially for insectivores like bats. I'd say this is starting to come along quite nicely, and that only took me less than 10 minutes. Now, these are all cuttings, so they might not actually survive, but willows have the best survival rate of any tree that I'm aware of. A werewolf? A werewolf. Now, a lot of people might say, oh, they'll just die if you don't put them in water first, get their roots to grow. That's a very, I don't know, debatable statement. I have found in my time on this green-ish earth that if you just put them straight into wet ground, very marshy ground, the type that is abundant in the UK, they will take most of the time. Okay, fairly pleased with this little section. I'm going to definitely add more to the other side, but I don't want to put too much work into it because this could possibly just all be mowed down by the next fool that gets told to come here. One of the biggest and most unfortunate oversights when it comes to environmental management in the UK is that underqualified people often get the jobs, or are still in jobs they've had for decades. And whilst they do know how to change the land to their whim, they don't know the ecology side of things. Obviously this isn't everyone, but it's a bloody lot of them. It's people like those in places of power that make the decisions. And if you don't keep ecology in mind when you are trying to keep a landscape healthy, well, it's not going to be healthy. Here is the other side of that little area there. All these dead plants are Himalayan balsam that has been allowed to propagate unchecked. Hopefully our actions here will help. We'll see in spring. Also, only just remembered this. Autumn is the best time to plant them because the plants are in dormancy, so they're less likely to die. So I have actually asked the owners of this land if I can, for absolutely free, just really start planting these cuttings all across this area. And like every other time I've messaged, emailed a landowner, it's gone unhindered and ignored, which is a massive shame because this relatively small piece of land has a lot of potential for wildlife and for flood prevention, invasive species control, everything. And here's what the rest of it could look like. You can see that the willows and some birches have started to come back all on their own. This is one of the better areas that they have left to just do what comes naturally. And there is more biodiversity in a little section of this than there is throughout this entire field. Come down to the water's edge, we can see that even from just this little area, there was a fish that darted past there, and the water itself is quite clear. It's hard to tell because I got the reflection. It's pretty damn good. If this were more extensive, going out onto there, this could even house some of the rarest birds in the UK, because a lot of wetland birds need healthy wet woodland and reed beds like this to prosper. One of them is the bittern. Never seen one around here because this is far too small. But I do hope one day maybe I revisit this area. Oh, there goes one interesting wading bird. Don't know what it is. But I do hold out hope that one day, if they let this do what nature intends, we'll see a lot more wildlife in this area. Here you can see it. Makes it look a lot bigger from this angle, but I assure you, this little patch of wetland is small compared to the rest of the field. And honestly, trees can come up all the way here, and they would massively benefit everything in the area for it. This might not be the most scientific way of explaining and doing things, but it does show you that you yourself, anyone, can just go out and make free trees from clippings. Willows are just the best way of doing it, especially if you're in a particularly wet area. Just be sure that when you do plant these things, it's in the right place and you're not just completely modifying an ecosystem that's supposed to be different. For example, the reed beds there, I don't really want to plant there. The only reason I'm planting sporadically every so often throughout there is because I know that's not going to get mowed. And I know that the species I'm planting are indigenous to the UK. Just because I know plants, it's part of my job. But just don't go willy-nilly planting any old tree. It might cause more issues than it's worth. But I hope this video has been instructional and given you some hope for what you can do. And just remember, it's not just willows that you can do this with. Willows are just the easiest and the best a lot of the time that you can take cuttings from, plant in the ground, and hope for the best. But birches occasionally can be used. Oaks are very hard, but it is possible. Anyway, best of luck to you guys. I'm off home.